Good evening. Who prayed for rain? That's almost like saying, who touched me? Everybody denied it. Can't complain about the rain. Rain is a blessing from God. So today we're going to meditate and look at this beautiful scripture that speaks to me, and I hope it speaks to you, about where we need to go when we fear or when we experience fear and anxiety. I think fear and anxiety is something that we all experience of some point in our lives. Did I tell you one time I was in this parking lot and they had these new things. They looked like a combination of a telephone pole and a light pole, but it had a bright blue light and it said panic button. And they had them like every so often in this parking lot. You see them a lot like in college campuses, or you see them outside of big malls, and I was on my way somewhere and I walked by one and I said, panic button? I need one of those in my office. But then I went on a little bit further and I saw another one and it said, out of order. I walked a little bit faster and I went to a second one and it said, out of order, start running. And I found myself all the way almost to the third or fourth one and it said, out of order, you're SOL. Or something like that. It was dark, I couldn't see it. Little did I realize I was in the church parking lot. That tells you something about how fear and anxiety gets to me. I mean, I make a big deal out of something that really doesn't call for that, but that's exactly what anxiety is, at least in my experience, is that I internalize what I think is outside. I don't take the time to see what is really happening to me on the inside. I just get afraid automatically of the things that I cannot control, things that are outside of me. Fear and anxiety are good things. They're good tools to have. Fear is what keeps us, or what makes us learn sometimes not to get too close to a dog, or not to play with fire, or not to, mess with my mother when she's watching telenovelas. Those are, her soap operas. You learn these things. Fear is a good thing. Fear is a good thing that it teaches you where not to go. But it's when it controls you that it becomes a problem. When it doesn't allow you to be yourself, that's when it's a problem. When it doesn't allow you to express who you really are, when you actually have to get to the point where you have to hide from yourself because you're too afraid of being honest with what you're feeling. At least to me, that's what my fear and my anxiety does to me. It gets me so afraid that I'm actually afraid of myself. And I'm not honest with myself. I have a good friend of mine who is a professional bodybuilder and fitness model, and his name is Nick. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he says, how you doing? I said, I'm doing okay, but I'm a little scared about tonight. And he says, why are you scared? I said, because I have to preach on being fear and anxiety. And he said something very simple that I would never take from somebody. He said, well, if you know it's anxiety, then let it go. If you know what it is, let it go. How true and simple, huh? And yet how difficult to live. Not to let the outside trouble my inside. Now, not allowing the outside situations that we just find ourselves in to penetrate who we really are on the inside and dictate how I'm going to live my life. Not to allow outside images to rob me of the peace that God really wants me to experience. The joy, the happiness of being alive, of being here, of being present. Not to allow those things to rob me. I must go through them so they don't go through me. I have to go through these situations not being fearful, because I know that I am in the hands of someone that is much greater, more powerful than me, and that's God. And not allow those things to go through me, because if they go through me, I keep them. We hear today in the gospel reading about this woman. Now we hear that, Jesus was walking through this town, and the crowds were pressing on him. The crowds were just all up on him. I mean, probably pushing him, you know how celebrities nowadays, when they come out of a hotel or they come out of a film festival and you got the paparazzi and you got everybody taking pictures of them. Nobody really cares about them. They care about the picture. They care about the photo. They don't really care about what's happening to that person or what that person, who that person really is and what they're going through. They care about the picture. It's sort of like all the people in Jesus' time, all the men that were following him, the crowd that was following him, they really weren't even following him. They were just going along for the ride. Hey, who's this? I don't know. Let's go check it out. We don't know. It's just people are going. Let's go too. Nah? And if they had a camera, all they wanted was a selfie with Jesus. They really didn't care what he had to offer. They really didn't care what he had to say. They just wanted to go along for the ride. Except for somebody, a woman who had been suffering, we heard, that long, has spent all her money and to no good result. No one could help her. But quietly, unlike the crowds, quietly, she tries to step a little closer to Jesus in her suffering. And she knows that her suffering makes her impure. She knows that her suffering alienates her from other people. She knows that her suffering doesn't allow her to join the crowd, doesn't allow her to enjoy life, doesn't allow her to come out in public, because she's considered unclean, impure. And anybody she comes into contact also becomes unclean and impure. It's sort of like when I'm filled with fear and anxiety, and the people around me can notice that. They can feel it. This woman was afraid of what she was feeling, but she knew that man Jesus, had something to offer to her that no one else could. And she knew she couldn't get that close to him, so she tried just a little bit more, just a little bit closer, just a little bit closer. No, she never gave up. And she says, if I would at least touch the tassels on his cloak, if I can just do that, I know something will happen. And I know it will bring me peace. And wouldn't you know, it happened. And Jesus stops the crowd, turns around, and asks a very important question that is important for her and is very important for all of us today. And Jesus says, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" There's a lot of ways to say that. Huh? There's a lot of ways to say, "Who touched me?" "Oh, I know you didn't put your hands on me. I need my space." I think the way that Jesus said it, though, had to be a very compassionate and loving "who touched me." I think that in other words, we could say that Jesus said, "Who's the person in need here tonight? Who's the person who's really caught on to who I am? Who's the person that I really need to get to know tonight? Who's the person that really wants a relationship with me here tonight? Who's the person that is in such their need that they had to do it in silence? Who is it?" And of course, the woman had to confess and in her own way explain to the Lord that it was her. I think that's a beautiful symbol of where we are tonight. Jesus is here with us. He's always present, but we have him present in a very special way. He's here tonight, and he wants to be touched by us. And I think that's something that is difficult for a lot of people, because we think of Jesus and his divinity and how he's the Son of God, and he is God, and he's so wonderful and perfect and holy that we can't get near him. It's good enough that I'm from here. Okay, what's up, Jesus? Cool. We want to take a step back instead of taking a step forward like that woman. We want to take a step back because of our fears, because of our anxieties, because of everything that we hold inside that doesn't allow us to come forward. Thank God we don't have a don't touch this God. You can't touch this God. We have a who touched me God. We have a God that wants to be touched. And God knows that this is exactly what we need. We need that embrace. We need that human touch. Like everything in our life is not complete without human touch. You notice when a baby's born into a family, especially one of our families, a baby's born, and like you're far away, you may live in another city, in another state, and you rejoice, you're happy for the couple who had this baby, and you send them a card, you send them flowers, you send them a gift, you send them whatever you want. But isn't it true that the celebration is not complete until you get to hug the baby? Until you get to hold them? And think about marriage. You know how beautiful it is for a couple when they get married and they pronounce their vows to each other, and it sounds all good and stuff and everything, and then they have the party and everything. But the celebration is not complete until they embrace each other, until they really embrace each other. Not that fake kiss at the altar, the one they rehearsed a couple of thousand times. But the real embrace, that's when it really happens. And even at the end of life, we go to funerals of a loved one, and we feel for the family. We send our condolences. We thank, we send them flowers. But isn't it true that even that celebration is not complete until you get to hug the survivors of the loved ones, until you get to give a hug to those who are left behind? Then it's complete. When you're able to touch, true healing comes when you're able to touch and say what you have to say face to face. Jesus doesn't care to be a magician. He doesn't care that power came out of him, the woman was healed, and everybody's excited and happy, and he moves on. He doesn't care about that. What Jesus wants, he doesn't want to perform a miracle, because artists perform. He doesn't want to perform a miracle. He wants a relationship that changes people. He wants a relationship that makes people new. And this is why he asks, who touched me? Because he wants to know the name. He wants to know your name. He wants to know what you're going through. He wants to know what you want to be healed of tonight. He wants to know what your fears and your anxieties are. He's not a generic God. Okay, here you go. Come find Jesus and be healed of anything. He wants a personalized relationship that is able to bring healing. Now, Jesus is the remedy, right? Jesus is the answer to our fears and our anxieties. But we have to ask ourselves honestly, have we touched Jesus? Even when we come to communion and receive communion, and we receive Jesus in our hand or in our tongue, do we take the time, that split second, to say, I am touching Jesus? I am allowing myself to be touched by Christ, by God. He really is touching me right now. Or am I too worried about where I'm going to go, where I'm going to do? That instant, we are touching Jesus. Are we aware of it? Do you want to touch Jesus? Do you want to be touched by Jesus? Have you the courage to touch Jesus? Because when we touch Jesus, we risk him knowing us fully, Because when we touch Jesus, we risk him knowing what our faults are, what our defects are, what our brokenness is, what my sin is. Do I want to allow Jesus into what is hurting inside of me? Do I want to allow Jesus to know that part of me? If you want to find peace, if you want to no longer have to hide in your own fears, in your own anxieties, in your own little world, if you want to step forward, if you want to come forward and hold on to the one that gives you new life, we have to be free. Tonight, we have that ability because through the gift of God, we have the Eucharist. And like that woman, we have the opportunity tonight to come forward and to touch Jesus. Maybe we'll have the opportunity to touch him at communion time physically, but if we only touch the tassel of his cloak, if we only get a chance to touch it and let him know who we are, what my needs are, what my fears are, what keeps me from him. Tonight's ritual is a ritual of being able to come forward to Jesus and touch him. Let him know what we're here for tonight. And I invite my brother Oblates who are assigned to come forward. And as the priests come, like we do for communion, we'll have 2 tassels, 2 ribbons, the center aisles, 2 on the outside aisles. And I invite you, if you wish, to come forward and grab a hold of this tassel that is touching the Lord Jesus in the most sacred Eucharist, and tell him who you are, what your needs are, and then we'll go back to our place as we do for communion. But here's your opportunity to tell him who you are. Jesus is asking tonight, who touched me? Let him know.